Welcome to the Women Lighthouse podcast, your friendly guide through all the ups and downs of life. We're here to remind you that every woman has the strength to take charge of her journey and make her dreams come true. Each week, we'll share heartwarming stories and helpful tips from amazing women who have faced their own challenges, come out stronger. Tune in, get inspired, and let's start this exciting journey towards achieving your dreams together. The Women Lighthouse, your guide to a brighter tomorrow. Hello, ladies. You're welcome to today's episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. It's great to have you on the show today. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring the topic, how to teach your kids to be security conscious. So, before I go into the tea of this episode, I recall a time when my son got missing. Okay, so basically, it was after church. And after church, we would go around greeting people here and there. And as God will have it, that day was Mother's Day. So I was in the mood to greet and wish as many people happy Mother's Day. And I thought the kids had actually gone with their dad. But I didn't know that my son actually didn't go with his father, but he stayed back with me. And because I didn't know, I was just moving around greeting people. And by the time I got to the car, and I didn't find my son, and I asked my husband, "Where is he?" And he said, "He's with you." And I said, "No, he's not with me." I checked around, I didn't see him. I quickly ran back into the church and I searched. I called out his name. I couldn't find him. And I was just wondering, where will I start looking for him? So I decided to go back to the car just to see if he had gone back to the car. And as God will have it, ta-da! My son was back and he had gone to the car. And I was like, "Where were you?" And he said, "Mommy, I was following you, but at the point I didn't see you. So I decided to go and check where they buy puff puff. When I didn't see you, I came to the car." And I was like, wow, thank God. But that got me thinking that actually, how was my son able to figure out how to get to the car, what to do when he couldn't find me? And at that point, I had to give myself a pat on the back, like, wow, you've done a good job raising your son thus far. And it dawned on me that I'd actually unconsciously been teaching my son to be security conscious. And that was what helped him figure out what to do. So I'll be sharing with you 5 things that you should do when it comes to teaching your child to be security conscious and having to be more intentional about teaching your child about being security conscious. So I know when you think of teaching your child about being security conscious, you'll be wondering, is that not going too far? But the truth is, it's important that in the world we live in, we know that our children need to know how to protect themselves. Even especially if you're a working mom or you're not a stay-at-home mom and you have to leave your kids with maybe a house staff or a nanny or whatever, or even when they are in school or moments where you will not always be with your kids, you need to know how to equip them to be security conscious and what to do at every point in time, how to make them identify when their security is threatened and how to respond to it. First, when do you think it's time to teach your kids? At what point? Like for me, once my kids started talking and could understand and respond to me, that was just the right time to start teaching them certain things I would share with you here in this episode. So once your kids can communicate with you, yes, when the children are smaller, like 1 year or maybe less than 2 years, they can actually listen, they can understand, but they may not be able to express themselves. But the moment they begin to communicate and you could speak to them, they respond, they talk. Once they start talking and can learn, So if your child can learn ABC, can learn one, two, three, if your child can sing rhymes, if your child can say good morning, your child is old enough to learn some basic things about being security conscious. Also, I also started teaching my kids. First, I started by telling them my name and their dad's name. So one of the things you need to do when teaching your kids to be security conscious is it's important for them to know you. If you ask, who am I? Naturally, your kids will say mommy, daddy. But when your kids are lost, for instance, mommy and daddy is not going to solve the problem because nobody knows who mommy and daddy is. So it's important for you to begin to teach them your name. So I started with my son. Once he knows his name, what's your name? You teach him his name. The next thing is to know my name, know his father's name. So you teach your kids your name, your full name, your full name. Like sometimes my daughter, who is 3, when I ask her, because we have pet names that we call them at home, when I asked her what's your name, natural instincts would be for her to say her name is her pet name. She calls her pet name. I'll now tell her, no, that's your pet name. What's your name? She will now mention her name and not just her first name, her surname. So teach your kids your first name, your surname. Even at this stage, if you ask my son, what is my name? He will not just tell you my first name and surname. He will add the doctor to it. So he will tell you Dr. Uyime Hamilton. So it's important to teach your kids how to um, say your name, say your husband's name, so that when there is a need and they are asked, it's part and parcel of them. Another thing I taught my son is our phone number. I even think what made me teach my son a phone number, I was checking, I homeschool my kids. So I was checking different curriculums, and that particular curriculum was talking about things that children should know at certain age. And one of the things was phone number. And in my mind, I'm like, how will I teach my son how to memorize phone number? Like how? So it was more like trial and error kind of stuff. So one day I just wrote the phone number. Then I had a house help living with me. So I had started teaching him how to memorize it, teaching him every day what's mommy's phone number. Sometimes he will make mistake, we'll say it together. Then I wrote the number also for my house help and told her when I'm not around, so she should teach him. So that day when I came back from work, my son was so excited. I was like, oh, what is it? And he was like, Mommy, your phone number is, and he called out my phone number. Until today, my son knows my phone number. So in that kind of scenario, if he gets missing, he can easily say, oh, my mommy's name is this. Her phone number is this. And my son learnt this, I think, at 4 years. It wasn't up to 5 when he learnt it. At 4 years, he learnt my phone number. At 4 years, he learnt my name. So it's something that you need to do regularly. You do it as fun and play, memorize it. The way we teach our kids how to say Bible verses and sing rhymes, teach them to know your name, teach them to know your phone number. Also, it's important that we teach them to identify who are strangers. I know we were taught that while growing up in school, don't talk to strangers and all that. Even when it comes to not just strangers basically are people you do not know. But even when it comes to people they are familiar with and people that they know, they need to be conscious. For instance, I would tell my son, if he's learning his uncle's name, it's not just uncle. Everybody is not uncle. Everybody is not just auntie. You tell them based on name. So if I want to show him somebody, like maybe in the compound, and oh, mommy, who is that? I will not just, oh, that's uncle. No, rather, I would say this is Mr. This, Miss This. So if he wants to greet, he knows the person by name. So it's important for you, even if they may not memorize the name per se, they should be familiar so that if they need to describe to you, it's easy for them. So they should know those who are strangers based on those who are familiar, so those around them. So teach them that not all strangers are bad, but let them recognize what their limits are. So I'm going to still do another episode about how to protect our children from sexual abuse. But it's also important when it comes to security. Security is just not physical security, but also when it comes to boundaries that are being set. So it's important we teach our children about being conscious about their sexuality, their private areas, where people should touch and where people shouldn't touch. Then also another thing I teach them is the importance of security officials. Like they see people, the security man. Um, like I know when my children want to go play at the playground, I'm always very like skeptical. Sometimes I go with them, and I always tell them sometimes they want to follow maybe the house help to go outside and buy something. And I will tell them, no, you can't go outside. The security men will not allow you go outside. And my son will ask, but mommy, why? And I'll say it's for your safety, that normally they don't allow children go outside the gates without their parents. So you cannot go outside. So teaching them some of those things, they understand. They know the importance of also a police officer. So I'll tell them, oh, if you do something that is wrong and the police arrest you, it means you are going to stay in prison and you will not see mommy and daddy. So they are aware that there are certain boundaries that ought to be respected. And if disobeyed, it can lead them to not being able to see mommy and daddy. So those little things, sometimes it's easy for us to leave these things for schools to teach them. But as parents, we have a role to play in ensuring that our children's security is something that they are very well aware of. Another thing is that there should be a predictable spot where your kids can go to in case they get missing. So, for instance, it was easy for my son to know that, okay, if mommy is not here after church, so it's good to create a routine that your kids are familiar with. Children love routine. They don't love when their routines are interrupted. So usually after church, sometimes we would go to the stand where they sell snacks to buy puff puff for them. So he knew that after church, we would go to the snack stand. So he went and he checked and he didn't see. And he also knew where the car was parked. That's the disadvantage sometimes in over restricting our kids. We should allow our kids explore in our presence. So like now in the estate, we go out, we take walks. And most times I go with them. And as we go, I talk to them, I show them things. They know where the security stand is. So if there's a problem, they know they can go to the security stand. They are familiar with places. So for instance, now if my son wants to, we're at the playground in the estate and he wants to go back home, even if I'm not there, he can figure it out because I would allow him run, like, oh, go. So I'm there, but he's moving around and we do it as a routine. So he's not stuck in the house all the time and from the house to the car and he doesn't know. So he's familiar with his environment. So many times make your kids familiar with their environment. Because when kids are doing things every day or regularly, it's easy for them to be familiar. Your child cannot be living in an estate and they are not familiar with the estate. It doesn't make sense. And most times it happens that way because you keep your child under lock and key. You are always indoors. The kids don't come out. They are just restricted. So it's important that you ensure that your kids are familiar with the environment. So he was familiar with the environment of church. He knew where we were parked. He knew where we could be. It was predictable. If we're not in the adult church, we're either in children's church to pick them, from children's church to the puff puff stand, from the puff puff stand to the car, and we're out. And that's something we do every week. Though the puff puff stand is not every week, but it is a predictable place. And the people at the puff puff stand know him. So even if they didn't see us, it's easy because they know who he is. They are familiar with him because we go there regularly. They could have easily looked for us and alerted us. So it's important for you to create routines and structures that your kids can be familiar with. And when they are faced with a situation where their security is threatened, they know what to do. Sometimes create those scenarios. Behave like you are not looking and see and try to figure out what your children would do and use those moments as teaching moments to teach your kids on how to be security conscious. So let there be some predictability in your structure. And above all, practice. They say practice makes perfect, practice makes permanent. So it's important that you prioritize the security of your kids by making them security aware and security conscious. And if you can put these 5 things into practice, it will go a long way to help you ensure that you teach your kids how to be more security conscious. Thank you for tuning into today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Till then, keep living and keep dreaming. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. We really hope today's episode has given you some great tools, resources, and a boost of confidence to take charge of your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. You can also follow us on our social media handle for even more tips and a wonderful community that's all about supporting your growth. Join us next time for more uplifting stories and encouraging insights. Until we meet again, keep shining bright, stay inspired, and embrace your unique path to a better tomorrow.